Okay, we're going to look now at the Odyssey, and in particular, we're going to look at Telemachus and Telemachus' story in the Odyssey. We know now that Telemachus is about 20 years old. His father, Odysseus, fought in the Trojan War for 10 years, and he's about 10 years coming home. Now, Telemachus does not know that his father's alive. The situation Telemachus finds himself in is he's with his mother, and there are a bunch of suitors, a bunch of men are there. They're pining for Penelope. They want to take over Odysseus' household, but while they want to take over his household, they're also eating up the household, destroying the household. So how does Telemachus fit into all of this? Okay, Telemachus is his father is absent, so like many situations today, he's growing up in a one-parent household. And Penelope is an overprotective mother. We have instances of Penelope's overprotection. When Telemachus does journey in search of his father, Penelope says this is in Book 4, and it's lines 765 through 767. Penelope says, "If I had seen that sailing in his eyes, he should have stayed with me, for all of his longing stayed or left me dead in the great hall." She's so broken over the fact that he's gone, that he took off without her permission. Now we can understand her point of view because her husband left, and as far as she knows, Odysseus is dead. We find about 2 pages later in Book 4, starting at line 854, we see that Penelope weeps more for him, that is Telemachus. "'Tis for him I weep, more than his father. How I tremble for him, lest some blow befall him at men's hands or on the sea." So we see that she is really worried, and if she had had her way, Telemachus would not have gone out to sea. We do even see that later in the text, and this is in Book 17, we find it's Book 17, starting at line 45. When Telemachus comes home, she admits her anxieties to her son. She said, "You're back with me, Telemachus, more sweet to me than sunlight. I thought I should never see you again, ever. After you took that ship that night to Pylos, against my will, with not a word, you went for news of your dead father." So she admits that he disobeyed her, and if it were up to her, he would have stayed there. So we see him leading this sheltered life. So how does this play out throughout the story? How does Telemachus, despite being in a single-parent household with a very protective mother, how does he break out of that and become the man that he is, or that he wants to become? Well, let's take a small journey through some of the passages here. When Athena first comes to Telemachus, if you remember, Athena was on high talking with Zeus, and Zeus granted Athena permission to help Odysseus return home. Well, Athena knew that Telemachus was in trouble, so she had to find a way to go down and get Telemachus off of Ithaca and away from the suitors. When Athena first catches sight of Telemachus, it's Book 1, lines 139 through 142, Athena catches sight of him as a boy, daydreaming. And he's sitting there amongst the suitors daydreaming. That indicates a sense of powerlessness to do anything. He wishes that he could do something different. Same book, Book 1, line 190, when Athena introduces herself as a stranger to Telemachus, Telemachus doesn't know how to act in a mannerly way. Now, if he were a man, he would know how to act. Instead, he questions her. He asks her a series of questions. "Will it offend you if I speak? Tell me now, put it clearly. Who are you? Where do you come from? Where's your home and family? What kind of ship is yours, and what course brought you here?" Now, that doesn't seem like a lot, too bad of a thing to do. Boy questioning a stranger. Who are you? What are you doing here? But in the time of the Greeks, though, there was an error to this. You didn't question strangers. Strangers may have been gods traveling in disguise. So it really shows his immaturity in approaching a stranger so boldly and asking such questions of a stranger. Want to talk about one more point. This is in book number 3. After he does set sail, we see Athena again disguised, and we see that she's advising Telemachus against being shy. This is book 3, and it's about lines 13 through 19. Very important passage, because here we have evidence that, he's that hesitant boy. He's afraid to step out. He's afraid to find out news of his father. So there we have some instances of Telemachus, the boy Telemachus. Okay, so let's take a look at how Telemachus is coming of age, how he breaks the bands of his youth and tries to assert himself as a man. We find in Book 1, lines 386 through 419, Telemachus is actually rebuking his mother and rebuking the suitors. He's taking a stand. He stands up to his mom and says, "Mother, why do you grudge our own dear minstrel the joy of song, wherever his thought may lead? Poets are not to blame." So he says to his mom, "Let the minstrel sing if he wants to. You have no say in this. This is something that the minstrel should be able to do." Then later he rebukes the suitors. He says, "You suitors of my mother, insolent men, now we have dined, let us have entertainment and no more shouting." And he goes on to say in this section, he says, "At daybreak, we're going to sit down and we're going to have a council meeting and talk about what's going on here." And we do see Telemachus at council, and that's in Book 2. Book 2, starting at line 14, he takes his father's chair. So he's taking that place of position. He's asserting himself, albeit hesitatingly. He does assert himself. Then we also do see in Book 2, line 326, and I want to actually read that one. Book 2, starting at line 326, Telemachus says this to the suitors. He says, "Isn't it enough that you could strip my house under my nose when I was young? Now that I know, being grown, what others say, I understand it all, and my heart is full. I'll bring back doom upon you if I can, either in Pylos if I go, or in this country." So what he's telling the suitors here is he's saying, I used to be young. I used to let these things go on in my house, but not anymore. I am asserting myself as a man, and I'm going to bring hurt to you. He does say, I'll bring hurt to you later. Maybe not right now, but a little bit later. So we do see that little bit of hesitation there. A couple of other things where if we look later in the text, so we see him taking these hesitating steps to assert himself. Later in the text, we see in Book 16, lines 76 through 78, Telemachus says that he's ready to act as a man. In Book 18, lines 198 through 199, Eurynome, the maid, she says, she's talking to Odysseus. She says, don't you realize that your son is a full-grown man? He's a bearded man. So people are starting to recognize, Telemachus himself is starting to recognize that he is a man. Later, Odysseus accuses Melantho and says that Telemachus won't put up with this that's going on in the house anymore because he's a man. And that's Book 19, lines 89 through 96. Then we have, finally, Book 19. This is what we've been waiting for. Book 19, line 170, Penelope herself recognizes that her son is a man. So those sheltering days are now broken. The sheltering days are now gone. He is ready to act as a man, and he is ready to step out as a man.